Good morning or afternoon, or whenever you have the privilege of watching our online service for Roots PB. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers in our congregation, those who have children and those who do not, and those who mother, just because it's a natural instinct of ours to do so. Today I have the privilege of reading a poem for you that highlights how God can be seen as a mother. It is titled, God Our Mother, by Alison Woodward. To be a mother is to suffer, to travail in the dark, stretched and torn, exposed in half-naked humiliation, subjected to indignities for the sake of new life. To be a mother is to say, this is my body broken for you. And in the next instant, in response to the created's primal hunger, this is my body, take and eat. To be a mother is to self-empty, to neither slumber nor sleep. So attuned you are to cries in the night, offering the comfort of yourself and assurances of, I'm here. To be a mother is to weep over the fighting and exclusions and wounds your children inflict on one another, to long for reconciliation and brotherly love, and, when all is said and done, to gather all parties, the offender and the offended, into the folds of your embrace, and to whisper in their ears that they are beloved. To be a mother is to be vulnerable, to be misunderstood, railed against, blamed, for the heartaches of the bewildered children who don't know where else to cast the angst they feel over their own existence in this perplexing universe. To be a mom, to be a mother, is to hoist onto your hips those on whom your image is imprinted, bearing the burden of their weight, rejoicing in their returned affection, delighting in their wonder, bleeding in the presence of their pain. To be a mother is to be accused of sentimentality one moment and injustice the next. To be the receiver of endless demands, absorber of perpetual complaints, reckoner of bottomless needs. To be a mother is to be an artist, a keeper of memories past, weaver of stories untold, visionary of lives looming ahead. To be a mother is to be the first voice listened to and the first disregarded. To be a mender of broken creations and comforter of the distraught children whose hands wrought them. To be a mother is to be a touchstone and the source, bestower of names, influencer of identities, life giver, life shaper, empath, healer, and original love. Thank you so much for joining our service today. I'm going to pass it off to Grant and Carla. God's peace be with you this morning and always.
Hey Roots, happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us. And happy Mother's Day if there's any moms watching this today. We're just going to go ahead and enter into some time of praise and worship right now. So right there where you are, I invite you to join me. Here we go. came and died and gave his life for us. Let our voices rise and sing for all he's done. Our fear is overcome. Our God is love. Our God is love. Every distant and broken heart, every prayer, every outstretched arm, finding hope in the love of the Father. All the glory and praises rise, all the glory for all the time. Jesus, Savior, forever and after. This is love. Jesus came and died and gave his life for us. Let our voices rise and sing for all he's done. Our fear is overcome. Our God is love. Oh yeah, our God is love. Come on, sing age to age. Age to age, we will be singing in the light of all he's done. All the earth, everyone singing in the wonder of his love. Age to age, we will be singing in the light of all he's done. All the earth, everyone singing, this is love. Jesus came and died and gave his life for us. Let our voices rise and sing for all he's done. Our just want you. I just want you. Nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Oh, Holy Spirit, you are welcome. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Holy Spirit, you are welcome. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. It's what we long for, your presence, Lord. Father, we just thank you so much for this time we were able to have together. We just invite you to be with us where we are, Lord. We open up our hearts to you to receive everything in store that you have for us in this message that we're about to hear. Thank you, and we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Hey everybody, glad to be here with you again this week. Our sermon this week is from the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. So let me read that for us now. Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Now, the Gospel of John contains 7 I am statements. What that means is there are 7 times when Jesus says, I am something. I am the bread of life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the light of the world, and so on. Throughout the history of our faith, Christians have placed vast significance on these statements for 2 reasons. One, because they tell us what Jesus thought about himself. These I am statements are times when Jesus can tell us directly who he is and what he's all about. And second, the use of the phrase I am seems to be a direct reference to the name of God. When Moses encounters the Lord at the burning bush and asks for the name of God so that all the Israelites will know who Moses is representing, the Lord replies, I am that I am. Jesus seems to be deliberately referencing the name of God by using the phrase I am each time he makes a declaration about himself. So the I am statements are very important, and most of them have been described at length numerous times. I know I've certainly preached sermons here at Roots on at least a few of them over the course of the years, but the one we're going to talk about today is probably the most overlooked and understudied. I am the gate. One of the reasons this gets so overshadowed is that in the very next verse, John 10:11, Jesus delivers the much more famous, I am the good shepherd. 2 I am statements back to back, and one of them is much easier to understand than the other. We instinctively know what it means for Jesus to be a good shepherd. A good shepherd protects and cares for the sheep, leads the sheep, and so on. But for Jesus to be a gate is a little bit more confusing. And it doesn't help that both of these statements are part of one larger extended metaphor. Jesus is the gate, and the shepherd who comes in by the gate, maybe even the gatekeeper who lets in the shepherd. And if you really want to take it to the extreme, you could say that Jesus is also the pasture the sheep go to, because he's already described himself as the bread of life in an earlier chapter. Okay, that's taking it a bit too far. It's an exaggeration, but not by much. This is one big extended metaphor in which Jesus seems to play almost every role, besides that of the sheep and that of the thieves or robbers. So let's break it down a bit and try to understand what it means for Jesus to be not just the good shepherd, but for Jesus to be the gate as well. The first thing I want to look at is that Jesus is talking to the Pharisees. In fact, the circumstances of this conversation are important. Just before Jesus says these words, in John chapter 9, we're told the story of Jesus healing a blind man. That's a pretty normal thing in the Gospels. Jesus heals quite a few blind people. I'm guessing off the top of your head, you can't remember which one exactly that is, because there are several famous stories of Jesus healing someone born blind. But this is a rare instance in which we continue to follow the story of the blind man after he's been healed. So John 9 has 3 main sections. First, Jesus heals the blind man. Second, The Pharisees encounter this blind man. They question him. They bring him in for questioning and send him out and bring him in again for questioning about his experience with Jesus. And then, Jesus had healed him on the Sabbath, and there's all this stuff going on. And they throw him out of the Sanhedrin. They just like, all right, we can't deal with you anymore because this guy is being too praising of Jesus. The third section, the end of John 9, is that Jesus returns to the blind man, tells him about himself, right? He tells him about his role. The man sort of accepts Jesus. There's some sort of understanding of who Jesus is meant to be. And then he does all of this in the presence of Pharisees, and so Jesus says, this sort of ending of John 9 is a fascinating exchange between Jesus and the Pharisees, and it goes like this, starting in 9:39. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." And some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, "What, are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains." This is one of the times when chapter breaks in the Bible, which were added a lot later, by the way, those chapter breaks can take away really crucial context. Because John 10 opens with Jesus still speaking to the Pharisees. The end of John 9 and the beginning of John 10 might as well be two sentences in the same paragraph, for all that we know. We have some context now for the first part of our passage tonight. If you look at John 10, 1 through 5, which is the rest of the speech that Jesus started at the end of 9, you'll see that Jesus repeatedly highlights sound and voice. Remember that the blind man is still right there. Even though Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, the blind man is hearing all of this. And what will the blind man recognize in this metaphor that the Pharisees don't? All his life, he identified people by their voice, by their sounds, rather than by sight. In this way, he's like the sheep who know their shepherd's voice. Okay, but now we're going back down the shepherd track again. Why does all that backstory matter for the metaphor of the gate? Well, hopefully now we can start to unpack some of the images that Jesus is using here in the first part of our passage. For one thing, we know that the sheep should be identified with the blind man, which also means should be identified with all of us. Where should we put ourselves in this story? It's with the sheep. And I think that that's probably pretty obvious, right? That's probably what most of us did from the beginning because we're used to that. If you've heard a lot of biblical parables or sermons before, then you're used to sort of we're the sheep, right? But in this case, we kind of we can know that because we are like the blind man, right? We have been redeemed and healed by Jesus, and so that's taken for granted. But it's good to know, and there's some power to that. There's some meaning there. Well, what else can we learn, right? What other metaphors are going on? What other images can we unpack? Let's look at what Jesus says again at the beginning of chapter 10. He says, "Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep." So here Jesus is establishing the role of the gate, right? If someone comes in through the gate, they're the shepherd. Anyone who comes in by any way other than the gate is a thief and a robber. So the gate is sort of a standard for legitimacy. But notice that it's not where he enters that makes the sheep follow the shepherd. If the shepherd were to climb the fence, they would still know his voice. We have that other piece of it going on. It's the voice and the noise of the shepherd that lets the sheep know that their real shepherd is here. So the gate doesn't make someone a shepherd, but Jesus is saying that a real shepherd goes in by the gate. Why would they come into the sheep pen any other way? Now verse 6 says, Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Me too, Pharisees. Me too. I've tried to unpack this metaphor, but so far I've only succeeded in adding a bunch of extra stuff and making it more confusing. So let's briefly summarize before we get to the second half. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees after healing a blind man, whom the Pharisees had just questioned and mistreated. Jesus calls the Pharisees blind as well. And when they protest, he says if they're not blind, then they're guilty. He then launches into a metaphor of a shepherd and thieves. Due to the sheep following the voice of the shepherd, it's clear that Jesus is referring to himself as the shepherd, the Pharisees as the thieves. And in all of this, the gate is seemingly ancillary, secondary, but also kind of important. He's mentioned it a couple of times. It seems the gate represents truth, a legitimate claim to being a shepherd. Right? The sort of the pathway of a true shepherd is the gate. With all of that in mind, let's take a look at what Jesus says next in verses 7 and 8. So this is verse 7. Therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. Now I think we can start to see what Jesus is trying to say here. Before Jesus, there was no gate. And this has implications for the Pharisees and for the blind man, aka us. For the Pharisees, Jesus is saying that everyone who came before him, all the teachers of the law, even the prophets and kings and so on, none of them were the true shepherd of the people. None of them could truly lead people to life and salvation. And this is a good reminder for me and anyone else who's in any kind of Christian leadership. There's no other way to be a real, legitimate Christian leader other than through Jesus. Christians must learn to walk, talk, and act like Jesus if we want to lead people into the life that Jesus offers them. And as for what Jesus as the gate means for the blind man, and therefore for all of us, let's turn to John 10, 9 through 10. Jesus says, I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. The gate has two functions: to keep sheep in and to let the shepherd and his sheep in and out. So in verse 9, Jesus says that whoever enters through me will be saved. And the word for saved can also simply mean kept safe. When we go in through the gate, we're kept safe in the sheep pen. We are saved. Jesus, as the gate, created a way to salvation for us. And verse 10 really caps it all. Not only can a gate keep us safe, but it's also an opening to let us out into the world. Before Jesus, we could not go safely with the shepherd to experience life abundantly. But now, through Jesus, we can have life to the fullest. It's only through Jesus that we can experience that full joy that life has to offer. Other ways, like that of the Pharisees, cannot bring us that true joy. Legalism and avoiding the world will lead to a dull and joyless existence,